Good afternoon. I call the special meeting of Knox County Commission to order for Monday, June 23rd at 1 p.m. Madam Clerk, if you'll call the roll, please.
Commissioner Rawls.
Present.
Commissioner Durrett.
Present.
Commissioner Oster.
Here.
Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Russell.
Here.
Commissioner Hill. Here. Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Fox. Commissioner Jay.
Here.
Commissioner Frazier.
Present.
Thank you. We are waiting on Mr. Vandevate. He will be down momentarily. And just to kind of give everybody an understanding of this meeting is for discussion of the ordinance that's on the agenda this evening regarding the Richard L. Bean Detention Center. If any commissioners have questions for Mr. Vandevate, please ask them. If you have discussion that you would like to talk about, please do that. This is right before our meeting tonight, so we have a little bit more time to get some last minute questions answered. And I felt that was very important with this topic. So Mr. Vandevate is here. Welcome. And so we will open it up for commissioners to ask questions. Okay. Commissioner Rawls?
Okay. Where's Mr. Vanderbeek? Where? Oh, there
I
he
was
is.
hoping you didn't see
Oh.
him.
I'm sorry. I was looking down. And did not. I apologize.
The way it is, I've learned just now, this is not the main assembly room.
Great. Just quick question about the staff, the staff going forward, or the current staff. We can just talk about the current staff. Is the current staff Knox County Sheriff staff that's in the Bean Center?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Ross, are you asking in the current status?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So you're asking in their current status?
Yeah.
No, sir, they are not employees of the Sheriff's Office currently. They're employees of the Juvenile Detention Center Board of Trustees, though they are likewise, I suppose, general government employees because the budget is on the books of the general fund.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Durrett?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vandevate, what are the requirements for juvenile detention center operations? Like, what are the state requirements per DCS?
They are provided, bear with me.
Sure.
See, a little trickier at this small podium, but they're provided for, sorry, but time catches up to you.
I understand. Take your time.
Thank you. They are provided for in Chapter 250-0408 of the Tennessee Code, minimum standards for juvenile detention centers and temporary holding resources, 41 pages that are codified and updated regularly that fall under the oversight of DCS. So there's very strict protocols for both the physical plant, staffing, and the operation of these facilities.
Okay. I know I guess what I'm trying to get at with that question is, are there any requirements for post-certified employees in this detention center or in one across the state?
Again, I just for the benefit of the body, I want to qualify all my answers by saying my knowledge of juvenile detention standards is a robust 4 weeks old. So I'd encourage you to double check me on these things, but peace officer standards and training or post is typically for law enforcement officers. I think the state views these differently. There are training standards in place, but I don't think they're post standards. They're probably covered by DCS, as opposed to on the adult correctional side, they would be covered by Tennessee Corrections Institute or post.
Okay. So basically, DCS would be the ones training any and all employees that would be employed at the detention facility, regardless of regardless of where oversight sits.
Yes, ma'am. I would assume it may be a parallel universe to the adult system in that if you have a large department like ours, they might provide the training internally, but using DCS standards. So
Okay.
that's typically, for instance, it's the sheriff's office on the adult side. They do their own in-service, but it meets the state requirements and state standards.
Got it. And what would be the hierarchy of oversight if in fact the ordinance and the resolution that are on our agenda tonight were to pass? So we know basically it stops with DCS. So DCS is at the top, and then where would that go?
Hierarchically, DCS, as you said, is the body with ultimate oversight under authority of the state. And then I would think that should the ordinance pass, the board of directors of commission would be the next. And for this interim period between July 1st and January 1st, assuming that we move forward as planned, and as commission knows, we've talked to a gentleman named Brian Bivens as a possible interim superintendent. I assume Mr. Bivens would work as a general government employee, so technically for the mayor, though during this 6 months, and the whole point of this 6 months is to give the sheriff an opportunity to ease into this space, because this is not space that the sheriff currently occupies. The standards for training are different. Frankly, the workforce is likely to be different. He has said he needs time to both identify and understand the existing leadership within the system, because there are good folks working there now that we'd like to keep and develop, as well as 10 vacant positions that he needs to recruit for and try to staff. So over time, I suspect you would see the facility move more away from the mayor's office and towards the sheriff's office, with the idea that the sheriff would take over operation on a daily basis January 1 of 26. So think of it as a transition, less of an event and more as a transition.
Right. Thank you for that. And I know you mentioned the board of directors, which is created by the ordinance. So my question is, with that piece, if the sheriff takes over on January 1, does that board of directors remain in place?
It does.
Okay, thank you. And then, do you happen to know how many detainees are currently at the Richard Bean Juvenile Detention Center?
30 as of this morning, though obviously that number changes typically throughout the day as people go to court and come in and out of the system, but 30 as of this morning.
Okay, and I'm assuming that's a range of offenses that they're being charged with there. Do you have any insight onto that?
Just in conversation with Judge Irwin, a couple things to remember. One that we reemphasize a lot: no child is inside the doors of this facility unless they have had a series of traumatic events in their life. Mm-hmm. We never want to lose sight of that. Now, that said, when they are there, we're responsible for their care, and the range of offenses typically would be all felonies if they were adult offenders. So anything from a robbery charge or a burglary charge up to and including homicide at any point in time. Okay, and you touched on something that is, well, and I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I would assume everyone else too, that is close to all of our hearts on, these are obviously children who have experienced some type of trauma that have led them down this path. And I just want the general public to know that that is very top of mind as we are thrust into this situation that none of us are experts on. And so just know we are doing the best we can for the sake of their rehabilitation. But also we have to be cognizant of the fact that some, much to our dismay, some juveniles are there for serious reasons and serious offenses, and we must be able to keep the other ones that are there safe as well. And so that's kind of where this lies into a big conundrum of, while we want there to be education and psychological support, we also need there to be safety for all that are there, including staff, but also the other detainees that are there. And so I thank you for
your crash course in juvenile detention, and because we all kind of feel that way. I know I do. I'm very much thrust into this situation and drinking from a fire hose with information on how this works. And so I just want to say I appreciate all the work you put in since this situation has landed in our lap. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I think I'm in the right order. Commissioner Lee is next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions.
ma'am.
The first being, will the same salary that the officers get with the sheriff, will that apply to the officers that go to the juvenile?
Ultimately, we'd leave that to the discretion of the sheriff commissioner. I think so. When in conversation with the sheriff, I said, thanking him for his willingness to take this on, because it is not a statutory responsibility of the sheriff. He does not have to do this. He is doing it voluntarily. So I should make that point early and often. The sheriff could have shown me the door and did not. So I'm grateful for it. I told him at the staff of 65, there were 10 vacant positions, and he looked me dead in the eye and said, Dwight, I have 40. So recruiting is hard. It's hard statewide. It's a problem for juvenile service centers across the state, adult correctional facilities across the state. I assume the salaries will be roughly commensurate, but that probably would long-term be a question for the sheriff.
Okay, and you said that they were short 10, do you know what those positions are that they're short at the juvenile center?
As far as I know, they're all correctional officers.
All correctional officers. Okay, and then you said that DCS would be responsible for oversight. What all does that entail? Will DCS be involved in the day-to-day operations, or if you could explain that a little more?
Sure. DCS normally, their cadence for visits is typically, and inspections is typically quarterly. They had increased that cadence because of two concerns they had, which were ultimately the catalysts that brought us all together today. Those two are staffing and healthcare. Healthcare including access to a nurse and proper dispensation of medication. And so those two consistent challenges there were what forced the issue both with DCS and with Judge Irwin when he reached out to the mayor. They have, at our request, continued a cadence of weekly visits. And I think in Commissioner Durrett's resolution, it asked that we request DCS to continue those visits on a weekly basis through the end of September. I would assume somewhere a staff person at DCS who is accustomed to making quarterly visits and has other facilities for whom they're responsible hopes that we'll get to the point where we don't think weekly visits are necessary. I'd submit to you that actually could happen sooner rather than later, thanks to Mr. Kevin Parton, because we now have nurses going in weekly on rotation there. Let me say early and often also, that is intended to be temporary. I committed to Mr. Parton, we will not ask you to staff this facility on a long-term basis. He is not equipped to do that. He has responsibilities of his own. So ultimately, hopefully when Mr. Bivens is there and running it, he can either bring the nurse back that was there, or if for any reason add one, whatever he needs to do in order to get the healthcare piece situated. But Mr. Parton is there now, so from that standpoint, I think we're going to be in much better shape than we have been. On staffing, that's just a long-term endeavor, but DCS will give us grace on that because, frankly, it's a problem across the state. So currently, they're coming weekly to bring all that back around, but I suspect DCS would like to go to every other week or even monthly when they can.
Okay. Now, Mr. Bevins, I saw his extensive resume. Does he have any training working with juveniles?
Not a great deal, and he's very candid about that. That's something he wants to develop in a hurry, but he is well-credentialed in certain critical things like PREA, the Prison Rape Reduction Act. He's also extensively involved with the American Correctional Association on accreditation, and it's his goal. He said if he's fortunate enough to have this opportunity, he wants to start moving forward immediately to get this facility accredited. Probably a 1 to 2 year lift, not an easy lift, but he's committed to it and he has the skills and expertise to do it. And then he'll develop his training as need be, but he doesn't have direct experience in running a juvenile facility.
So would he be, after the sheriff takes it over, would he still be part of the board?
No, ma'am. I think we would put him under contract through December 31st. And then at that point, I mean, I don't know that the sheriff wouldn't attempt to recruit him. I'm not sure that Brian wants to come back to work full-time. He's retired once. He may want to stay retired after this, but he's willing to do it for the next few months, and we're appreciative of that.
Okay. And then I've been told by several officers that if juveniles have like a murder charge, that they're kept here at the Knox County Jail here at this courthouse. Do you know if that's true?
Some are and some are not. That's at the discretion of the judge.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay was next. He's having problems with his microphone, so.
I just think, thank you, Madam Chair. It just produces a lot of feedback, I think, when we're over on this end, so I'm going to try to not leave it on. Thank you, Mr. Van de Veen, for the work and for everybody's work in putting this together. I have a question about and this may be a question for the chair, maybe a question for the ordinance sponsor, or you, Mr. Van de Veen. The board of directors that would be right under DCS, but essentially be the managing, chain of command, so to speak, for the facility as a whole, and be the governing board, not chain of command, the governing board. Would they have the ability to change the constitution of and the makeup of their board going forward if the ordinance were to pass? It sets out a specific for commissioners, one person appointed by the juvenile court judge. But let's say, for instance, that board got together and one of the things that I would want to bring to that board would be a suggestion that we also include 2 members that are from the public at large, particularly with juvenile experience, that are outside of the bubble. I'm thinking for 2 reasons. One, as it remains, it is still could be a very political board. You have 4 elected officials and somebody appointed by a judge. It has the ability to turn right back over time into some of the problems that we came from. Having 2 additional people outside the bubble of government might be helpful. In addition, I think that there are a lot of really talented, skilled professionals wanting and willing to help that have specific skill sets and expertise in those ACEs, in those adverse effects as childhood trauma. And I think that if we are serious about that, and I believe we are, that is going to be an emphasis that we want to put more weight behind. So I don't want to add that now necessarily, and I think time is of the essence, and we're all working towards a very quick solution. But given everything, would that board be able to meet and say, we feel like we need 2 more people, and have that discussion and vote on it themselves, or would they need to come back to commission to change the makeup of their board? And maybe this is a law department question as well. Could
I speak? I defer to Mr. Moyers on the legal question, but I wanted to speak to the policy side of this just a little, Commissioner Jay, if I might, because we had pretty extensive discussions about this internally, and absolutely think that might be the right direction. So there are some, another thing to remind everybody of, the existing structure has been in place 53 years. So it will take some time to both fully understand where we are and where we need to be, and to unwind the existing structure and develop the new one. So we discussed extensively options in terms of working groups, advisory committees, policy boards, things of that nature, to try to bring some of those outside perspectives in. Absolutely concur that it's the thing to do. The where and the when seem to be a little bit more of the open questions at the moment. One of the things that's in Commissioner Durrett's resolution is the request, which I'm confident we'll get assistance with, that CTAS with DCS's assistance give us just a system-wide assessment of what is going on with the facility. And so with that assessment in hand, we felt like that might be a better time to go forward with addressing the gaps. We'll have a clearer sense of what the gaps are, what the areas for improvement are, and where we might need to bring in expertise and outside resources. We're just not there yet. We can't quite answer the questions because we don't know what all the questions are. On the legal side, of course, I'd defer to Mr. Moyers. And I should mention that I get a lot of credit for this, but when we were working through both the ordinance and the resolution, his wife was talking to him about sunscreen. So he was there for us when we needed it, and we really appreciate it.
Commissioner Jay, the answer to your question is this board is being created by this ordinance. So to expand the board, change the board, the composition of the board, you would have to amend the ordinance, which can be done at any time. I have some question about whether if you amend the ordinance as it's presented to you, whether it would remain viable as an emergency ordinance. Because under our rules, an emergency ordinance has to be, the full text has to be provided to the commission at least 48 hours before the meeting. So you could pass the emergency ordinance and then you could start the process of amending it if you liked. Or if you amended it tonight, then I think that would turn it into a regular ordinance that you'd have to vote on again next month as well.
Thank you for the clarification. I don't intend to amend it tonight, but I do think it's a worthy subject for discussion once the board is constituted, and perhaps the CTES study will help support that discussion. I mean, the first 6 months is going to be how do we set the footprint for success for the next 20 to 30 years, and I think it would to the appropriate place if it were to be amended, that board would take it up, discuss it, vote on it, and bring it as a resolution or bring it as a recommendation from sort of inside the bubble to us instead of us always sort of pushing it forward as best we know. So thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I just wanted to corroborate what you were saying about the post issue. It's my understanding that correctional officers are not post-certified, and that's reserved for law enforcement officers themselves, and there would be no expectation that any correctional officer would be post-certified.
Yes, sir. I believe that's still the case, though. Again, I am trading on a 40-year-old criminal justice degree. It hasn't actually helped me all that much in this past month, but correctional officers are extensively trained, and the certifying body is the Tennessee Corrections Institute, or TCI. Law enforcement officers, obviously, a different set of training standards, and those are the ones that are covered by peace officer standards and training.
Right. And I'm just passing on. I think I had a conversation with the sheriff, and that's what he told me, and I hope I was a faithful relator of that information.
Yes,
yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ross.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vanderbeek, a couple questions. Well, it's probably 3 or 4, to be honest. I just didn't want to dominate the first set since I was the first one that jumped in. But on you said statutory obligation. So the sheriff, because he's a constitutional position, we have no oversight. What level of oversight would we have if we moved with this proposed move of the Bean Center to the sheriff?
I think your ultimate oversight is the decision as to whether or not you want to continue with the sheriff as the administrator of the facility. The specific standards, the granular detailed work that the sheriff will do, or whoever is the custodian of the facility will do, is all covered by the Department of Children's Services in those 41 pages that I mentioned earlier. So, I would encourage this body, if the Board of Trustees moves forward, you probably don't want to spend a lot of time working through those standards, trying to do on DCS's behalf what DCS actually does very well. Part of the structure that, or an aspect of the structure that I like, that I think will bring value, is I think DCS has been challenged by the fact that when issues have arisen with the facility under the current framework, their reporting avenues are back to the existing Board of Trustees. And candidly, we've seen that hasn't been productive. So the Board of Trustees has oversight over the facility and the superintendent. There are issues with staffing and issues with medication and challenges there. They report that back to the Board of Trustees, and insufficient action comes. We suspect that DCS was probably going to put us in Chancery Court pretty soon, which would have been their next step. And I wanted to mention that because I know Commissioner Hill has had some frustrations with DCS not coming to us, but we really would not have been in this reporting chain. This structure, if the emergency ordinance passes, means that if DCS comes and does a quarterly inspection, and there is something particularly acute that they're dissatisfied with, or a problem that's persistent that just doesn't get solved, whether it's staffing or whatever it might be, this board of directors is where they're going to take those concerns.
Okay, so to that point, and that was where my actual next question was going, what level of teeth does this board, will that proposed board have towards infractions or persistent issues, since they're doing a total revamp of the organization?
And ultimately, I think that the biggest tool in your tool belt is to say, we want somebody else to run this facility.
I get that, but that would be at the end of the contract with the sheriff. But and what I mean by this is, if the new board is in place and we see there's a number of incidents from a particular officer, would that board then be able to fire that officer? Or would that go back to the sheriff?
I would think
get my
he's
question in?
Yeah, I do. He's an
Yeah.
employee of the sheriff. I wouldn't think this board would have any authority. And I'm not sure you would want any commissioner, just to be blunt. Again, I think you've got to trust that the sheriff understands the oversight that comes both from commission and the state. And again, this is a heavy lift that he doesn't particularly want to take on. He's willing to do it because he knows he is the best option. But at the end of the day, I'd encourage you to trust that he wants to get it right and that DCS wants to get it right. So, and these things won't occur overnight. I mean, again, we're unwinding 53 years. And it's probably worth mentioning that even looking at reports from this year, youth in the facility surveyed by DCS report that they're well-fed, they're well-treated. A couple report that they would rather be in this facility than another. So I wouldn't want to leave this body with the impression that kids are in some kind of conditions of abject misery. But Judge Irwin will tell you virtually every kid that's in that facility is on some form of medication, has to be right, and they have been struggling. And they have currently, as I mentioned, 30 kids there this morning. They actually have with some physical plan improvements, and I hope we never get to the point where we need this, but the state lists them with a capacity of 120. So clearly, the staffing issues have to be addressed as well.
My last question, and I'll relinquish it for some other questions, but the CTAS audit, the outside audit, when is that proposed? When is that going to happen?
We requested it by the end of the year, I think is what's in Commissioner Durrett's resolution. We discussed that just a little bit, and I think it's a reasonable expectation. One of the things to remember is that DCS has been doing, for the longest time, quarterly visits, and then doing now weekly visits. I think they have a pretty good handle on what the current situation at the facility is. I think CTAS taking that, starting to look at current best practices and things like that, and sort of giving us a roadmap forward, I'm fairly sure we could have that by the end of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, want to say thank you to Director Vandevate. I know he's put a lot of time and effort into this, as well as the mayor's office and his staff. There's been a lot of work and collaboration, and I also want to thank you all for spending so much time with us and answering questions after questions after questions. I mean, especially me, because I do tend to ask a lot of questions. And some of the questions that I'm going to ask, I know you have actually answered, but just wanted to share as well. And that, starting with the CTAS assessment, one thing that you all told me was that it would do an assessment that would put forth best practices that are fully compliant with state and federal laws, standards, and agency requirements, while suggesting recognized best practices in juvenile detention and rehabilitation. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because that's very important. The other part was, I asked the question that can the board then create an advisory, even if it's ad hoc committee, similar to what Commissioner Jay suggested, that consists of clinical professionals and experts in juvenile detention reform. That was very important to me, to have those people at the table. And so I guess my question is, can the board create an ad hoc or an advisory committee consisting of those individuals? Can we as commission encourage the board to do so?
Oh, absolutely, and I think you would also find support from Judge Irwin as well.
Yes. And I did talk to him, and he also liked that path forward. The other, can the board shape the focus of the Knox County Sheriff's Office and their administration of services within that facility?
Don't feel like I have any standing to speak for the sheriff. I just know he's committed to getting this right, and that the staff that he has worked with Mr. Bibbins in the past. They have a high level of confidence in him. One of the first things that Brian talked about when I reached out to him to see if there was any interest, he said, yeah, he thinks that there's a need to get away from doing things on an anecdotal basis and getting to a data-driven system. And they do have a new information management system there. I think it's called Quest, that's underutilized. They think that they can improve their operation with better use of data-driven best practices.
Okay. And then will the employees at the center be Knox County employees or KCSO employees? I was a little bit confused with some of the
I
questions.
think there'll be general government employees, Knox County employees through December 31st, and then there'll be sheriff's employees effective January 1.
Okay, so it would fall over. And then who will have medical oversight?
Well, in the near term, there is a contract with Dr. Keeble, and of course, Mr. Parton's providing nursing. So I think that'd probably be part of that transition. The sheriff's office has a robust nursing staff. I don't know if any of them would want to be recruited over in addition to the nurse that's there now. I probably shouldn't speak extensively to this because while there's not litigation, there have been some. Help me out, Mr. Moyers. I don't know exactly how to describe this, but there was an adverse personnel action was taken. That adverse personnel action was reversed. In the interest of avoiding litigation, the affected employees are currently on paid administrative leave until some transition takes place when we can bring them back, hopefully under circumstances where they won't feel disadvantaged. Is that reasonably in the ballpark, sir?
Couldn't put it better myself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hill.
Thank you. Mr. Vandevate, do you know how long the license time frame is when DCS grants a license to a facility? What time period that is?
I think, Commissioner Hill, I think it's an annual renewal.
It's
and
annual,
this is a distinction without a difference, but just again, so that I have the record correct. The Department of Licensing for DCS licenses private facilities and approves public facilities, but using the same body of standards. So it truly is a matter of semantics, but strictly speaking, DCS would approve our facility as opposed to license it. But again, it's the same body of standards. It's a distinction without a difference.
Thank you. Can I assume there's no one here from DCS?
No, ma'am, we did extend the invitation. That had to go from Knoxville back to Nashville to the commissioner's office. I spoke to Mr. Anderson again about it this morning, and he said, Dwight, just knowing the pace at which those things navigate, I'm not encouraged. So I don't know that anybody from DCS will be in attendance at the meeting today, but again, I went into this in all candor, knowing only about DCS, which I had read in the paper related to the foster care system and all the challenges that have been there. So I had low expectations, but they could not have been more helpful from Commissioner Quinn. Throughout the organization, we had a visit from the Deputy Commissioner last week, along with the Director of Juvenile Services and Mr. Anderson, and they want to help us get this right. They really do.
I'm sure they do. Just for the record on the beds and the licensure, and I do understand we could actually hold up to 120 children, and that would be that would just be horrible if we ever got to that amount. Some of you may not know, but my background with the schools, I worked quite a bit with juvenile court. And I'm very familiar with that. I worked with Judge Irwin. I will tell you, if a child is in our detention facility, it is the last resort, not the first. So this is not an easy group of juveniles that are in the facility. I very much appreciate that, and I appreciate the work that you've done too. What I don't appreciate is the fact that the buck has to stop somewhere, and there is plenty of blame to pass around. I mean, but really there's no need in doing that at this point in time. However, through all this, which is not a new problem, this has been going on for a long time. When I speak, the buck needs to stop somewhere. It in fact does stop with the Department of Children's Services. I have more to say, and I'll hold it till we actually vote, but I think it's extremely unacceptable that this being a facility under their purview for licensure and for oversight, and for this kind of thing to happen, and they, in essence, are passing the buck back. We can fix who's in charge of juvenile court. We can fix the board that has the oversight. We have control to do that. We can't fix DCS. And more than ever, I'm very, very upset, and professionally I think that this is very poor show on their part. I know they want to get it fixed now because basically, what's hit the fan. But, this didn't just happen. So again, I'll save my remarks, the rest of my remarks for the voting session.
Thank you. Commissioner Jay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In reference to Commissioner Frazier's question, I just want to make sure I'm very clear. The sort of oversight of this facility would be Tennessee Department of Children's Services, which has that sort of umbrella of legal oversight, the quarterly inspection, safety, healthcare, welfare of children. Essentially, the governing board that we would be creating would be next in line. Then that board would have a contract with the sheriff for a period of time, and then potentially extending thereafter, which would set terms and conditions. So they would have oversight of the contract, of the agreement of what would happen. And if for some reason the board didn't feel like the sheriff was doing an adequate job, they could terminate that down the road or change the terms of that. And then under the sheriff then would lie the director or superintendent that would run the facility every day, and the staff under that.
Ultimately, effective, if everything moves forward, that would be the structure effective January 1st.
Correct. For the first 6 months, we're trying to fine tune it, but the goal is to kind of lay it out in that general time, or in that structure.
Yes, sir. And Commissioner Jay, one bad habit I have is well, I've got a lot of bad habits, but one bad habit I have is sometimes using terms of art beyond the reach of what's appropriate for the context. And we talked about memorandum of understanding, we talked about contract, we talked about agreement. Mr. Moyers just kept bringing us back, as I think he should, to the fact that whether it's an agreement or however this configuration works, ultimately it's just subject to commission approval or withdrawal. So I don't know that anybody's contemplated at this point a formal agreement. I'm not sure what that would look like, and I would defer to Mr. Moyers for some guidance on that.
Because we're all Knox County, essentially.
Essentially, that's the point that he's made, and well taken. From the legal standpoint, I don't know what that looks like.
I think we'll figure that out over the coming time. But I think this goes to Commissioner Rawls' question of sort of what happens if a staff. I mean, there is a director or superintendent that is managing that staff. If there's a personnel issue, they, along with our Knox County HR personnel, would work together to resolve or change that issue. And all of the facility and the staff and the functions, all the way to the personnel, to the processes, to the paperwork would all be under that superintendent, would report to the sheriff, and then ultimately the board would govern all of that in a way that's more traditional as a board, less minutia of the day-to-day operations, more as the checks and balances and guidance and reporting and making sure that we're steering the ship correctly. So.
Yes, sir. I think that's a fair assessment. And it does remind me, I should mention too, one of the challenges that we've seen is business systems and processes within the Juvenile Services Center are staff-centric and antiquated. Basically, you have a superintendent who oversees day-to-day operations, but you have a deputy superintendent who handles virtually every back office and business process there is to handle, from HR to billing the state to ordering food to all kinds of those things that are just critical to keeping the lights on, staff paid, youth cared for, facility running, just the day-to-day operation. A lot of record keeping that is paper centric. All of that needs to change, and it all needs to be brought forward a solid 20 years. And we think some good's going to come out of that as well.
And then my discussions with you and the mayor even I had emphasized that I really do think that this board also needs to bring in a relationship and a connection point with our juvenile court and circuit court clerk, our criminal court clerk, perhaps even PBA might have a role in the facility itself as a whole. There are lots of resources, lots of partners, lots of very, very smart and capable professionals that have a way to make this better. And I think that we ought to bring all those people to the table because, you literally have two facilities in the same building with sharing a wall and our two different operations. There's lots of effectiveness and efficiency that could come from all of those partners being at the table, but I think that's part of the process going forward. So thank you.
Couldn't agree more.
Thank you. Commissioner Rawls?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vanderbeek, I'm assuming you guys did, so I'm going to just say I assume that you looked at other options besides the sheriff department. And in looking at those options, what was the result that made you guys land on the sheriff department being the best fit?
Of the facilities of this type across the state called secure hardware facilities, hardware secure facilities, the majority across the state are operated by sheriffs. And so that was a bit of our starting place. Some are operated by private third-party contractors, sort of a youth equivalent of Core Civic, that sort of thing. For a variety of reasons, that probably too much to get into here. We were just not enamored of that. Some are run by the juvenile court. In this case, Judge Irwin's not interested in taking on responsibility for the facility. And then some are run out of the executive branch. We just didn't feel like we had the staff and the bandwidth to take it on. And the sheriff just seemed to have both the capacity and the skill set, and it followed the model that we saw predominantly across the state. So that's how we landed there.
Okay.
Great discussion. Anybody else have anything? Commissioner Hill?
I might just add, as far as Commissioner Rawls, your concerns about the Sheriff's Department, I do notice, and I'm certain you did too, that in the resolution, that this actually is an 18-month contract. And I do know that we were really pressed under the gun, so to speak, to correct the situation and defined at this point in time what we felt like was the best equipped alternative to step in. But it is, in fact, a temporary alternative. It may end up being permanent, but for now, it is not.
Yeah, that's why I asked the statutory question earlier on. In his responsibilities are statutory, which means we can't touch the sheriff's responsibilities. But if it's not statutory and it's contractual, then we have the ability to make changes, et cetera. But for me, I just need to know what level of changes could that board make, et cetera, if we are making you know what I mean? It's a lot of moving parts, and I need to create the picture in my head, and I need to see where we are. So that's what's what. So.
Commissioner Jay?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think it would be helpful before we wrap this session to just review what is before us tonight. Just sort of walk through what are the things we're voting on tonight, what are the major parts and pieces. Perhaps it could come from the sponsor or the chair. Just sort of let's do a refresher now while we have the time and the bandwidth of everything as it in sort of big broad bullet points, and then that way tonight we're ready to go and fine tune it versus start all over.
Mr. Vandervaart, I'll let you take that.
I'll speak to the emergency ordinance first. Commissioner Jay, the critical thing to remember in this is that the existing superintendent and the deputy superintendent, who again does everything, are retiring August 1st. Hence the need to get qualified staff in place in the near term in order to make sure that we're able to run the facility August 1st and beyond. And frankly, in all fairness, both the superintendent and the assistant superintendent have vast institutional expertise. So to the extent that it's possible, and this is one of the reasons that the emergency ordinance was so important, getting somebody there for as many days as possible between July 1st and August 1st so they can benefit from all that institutional knowledge is important. So the ordinance dissolves the existing Board of Trustees that ultimately goes back to a 1972 private act and has been reconstituted a time or two in charter adoptions, creates this Board of Directors and moves us forward. Commissioner Durrett's resolution, she speak to it better than I can, but it provides the CTAS overview, authorizes the hiring of the interim superintendent, and has one other aspect that's left me at the moment.
There are two more. One is we have added to where it allows commission hereby appoints the following commissioners to the Juvenile Services Center Board of Directors, and it just leaves those blank. And then it also requests that DCS continue their weekly visitation of the center and, for lack of a better term, mini audits, if you will.
Thank you. Does that answer your question? Okay. So everybody kind of on board with the ordinance tonight and the resolution tonight. And I felt like it was important because obviously we can't speak outside of public, and so that's why it was great for us to be able to hear other questions of commissioners that we're not speaking to, but you can tonight. Yeah, you can go ahead. You can go ahead. I'll say what I was going to say when she's finished. If you'll give your name and county of residence for the record, please.
Imani, Knox County. You're actually my representative. So I had a whole speech to do, but I'm a little concerned that we're just acting as if there's no harm happening at the current facility. I had parents whose children have been basically put in fight clubs, have had food used as punishment, solitary used as punishment, but because they had to give their address to speak, they feared retaliation. And so hopefully we could talk about something to make the public more comfortable coming forward in the future. I don't understand how we're considering the sheriff when they can't even handle the actual facility they have right now. In 2023, I think the sheriff said he had 127 vacant positions. I think I heard it was 40 now. In that same year, there was a report that they were operating at 50% staff, and they said, quote, with a major overdose problem, endangering people inside. How is that not going to happen if they take over our children. They can't even securely create safety for the facility they have now. And also, there has been in custody deaths going back for a while. These are children that are being put in your hands. When you go home and you go to sleep at night, and the decision you make, you have to live with that. I don't want to come back here after a child has overdosed and a family is screaming at y'all and crying, right? We don't want to be in that situation. You keep saying that DCS is over. That's how we got in this situation. We're the same structure that's in place is not being changed. If they're going to have to report back to it, you need major changes to happen. I'm scared for our children. The sheriff department is not the answer. They need to work on the facility they have. I understand you need something temporary, and I agree it definitely needs to be temporary, but I do not think the sheriff is the option. We do have a proposal. We have things that have worked in other places that really function on care, rehabilitation. And it was incorrect what you said about people just being in there for like harsh crimes. I know a child that was in that facility for setting off fireworks in another county. So that is, I would encourage you all to ask for those audits, those like what the reason our children are being really put in there. I'm sorry, I'm just upset from hearing like what I've heard. It's as if, oh, we're gonna go just say we did this and we're gonna vote. I don't want a child to die. I don't think you all want a child to die. I do have questions about the things that being said about the money that they get per child, and he wanted to fill up that facility for money. And to the only system I know that profited off of people being in cages is slavery, right? I don't know the ins and outs of Judge Irwin's conflict of interest, who benefits off of more children being in cages, who gets that money? Do you all know? I don't, I'm asking the question.
If I may, I do know, at least last year, it was $175 per child per day when they were incarcerated. And Mr. Vandervaart can speak to this, but I'm fairly certain that that circles back around and it is used toward the expense that it costs to run the facility.
It is. It's a revenue line on the general fund, Commissioner.
Do any of the decision makers benefit from that?
No, ma'am. Just goes into the general fund, the aggregate fund that operates the county.
Okay. It's still a for-profit business though.
No.
So if we had 12 children in there, the budget would not be affected.
If the number of kids we are housing for the state goes down.
I think you need to answer this, not the microphone, sorry.
So the revenue line would show separately from the expense lines. So the cost to operate the facility stays relatively the same. What's budgeted in order to cover staffing, overhead, utilities, things like that remains the same, but the revenue line would be reduced if there were fewer children being held on behalf of the state, but the facility does not operate self-sustaining at all. Overall, the budget is about $5 million. I do not know off the top of my head what the revenue line is for state-housed prisoners, but I don't think it's anywhere in that ballpark at all. I would be surprised if it's more than a few $100,000 at most.
There are 30 lives in your hand. There are some great programs going on around the country that could see a child in a situation and help them to flourish so they never see that situation again. And so they can be productive members of our community, which is what we ultimately want for our youth. I don't want them to see this as we're giving up on them, that the only answer we have for them is punishment and law enforcement. And so I just ask you to consider that. I'm willing to talk to each of you before the meeting tonight. We do have a draft proposal. It's something new, it's something different, but I feel like Knox County can be the leader in the state to show that, we don't have to punish our children to get them to correct. We are investing so much in punishment that only happens after something is harmed, after something bad happens. We need to double the investment in prevention. Like, it needs to be, the budget is skewed. Why are we waiting till after the fact to talk about money? We need to talk about all these preventative things. And I'm willing to talk to each of you, like I said. But myself, others in the community, we definitely fear because of the things that has gone on in the adult facility, people being beaten, people overdosing, death. Like, how does that not translate to our children?
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to talk.
Thank you. Commissioner Fox?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have to push back on that comment, and I politely listened to what, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but stating that somebody being placed in a facility because they have allegedly committed a crime and are being held to protect the rest of society, and perhaps them, is not slavery. And it's not putting them in a cage. It's executing the justice system. And this is what our society corporately has decided is the proper procedure. And I have to push back against that statement. And I thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, everybody's had their time. Commissioner Hill?
Yes, ma'am. When you said we have proposals, we have answers, who is we?
My group, Community Defense of East Tennessee, and we have a lot of parents and children that we are supporting that has come through that facility. Some of our families have been directly impacted by that, and I know a lot of you all appreciate certificates and titles, but the best experience is lived experience and
Do you have a
expertise.
website?
Yes, I do. cthatpush.org.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Ask. cthatpush.org. And I'll say if anybody else. cdetpush.org.
Thank you.
I can send it. No, I did not send it because I wasn't sure what this was going to be. But I definitely can send it.
If you could do that, you send it to commission, and then our office can get it out to us, or you can send it individually, however you'd like to do that.
And it's a long-term plan. I agree. This has been a mess for a long time. We are just worried that in a rush, we don't want to put children in danger. Like, I understand it may be inconvenient and all of those things, but I know you all don't want to go home at night and think later on down the road, we should have done something different.
Thank you. Commissioner Rawls?
Yeah, the reason why I was asking for the proposal is that as this ordinance is gonna go, whatever structure the board creates, there needs to be some new ideas that come to the table. So we'd definitely appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A few things that I feel like need to be said. For one, I want to thank Mr. Vandevate, who has spent a lot of hours on the phone and in the office with me, and the sheriff, who when we first went in wasn't excited to see us come. But we have probably reworked this ordinance 3 or 4 times. We might be on our 5th one that's on there tonight. Mr. Moyers has been great to answer our questions and kind of guide us directly in the right direction legally. I appreciate Commissioner Durrett for putting her resolution on. I know that we've all spent time on the phone or with Mr. Vandevate and the mayor, who has taken this very serious. I think sometimes people think that we just come together one time and we just make these flippant decisions. I go home every single day making sure I'm making the right decisions for this community. And I think every single one of us sitting up here does the same thing. So the idea that we're taking this flippant, or we don't take this serious, or we're just jumping into something is so beyond, almost a little offensive, to be honest. This has been a situation for over 50 years, and like Commissioner Durrett said, we have been thrown a water hose that we're trying to drink out of and trying to learn as much as we can and get a proposal that is a jumping off point, and then we can advance it like Commissioner Jay has stated and bring more people in, and like Commissioner Rawls have said, try to make this a broad spectrum board that we are hitting as many people as we can to understand the direction that we need to go. So this has been very serious. I mean, I was on vacation dealing with this, taking time away from my family. And I take it serious, and it's not funny. I'm glad that you think it is. It's not funny. It's very serious. Yeah, because I only get 1 week.
Okay.
So, but I'm not gonna argue with you. The fact of the matter is, this has been taken very seriously, and I hope you all know that. It's been taken serious by the mayor. The mayor saw a problem, he jumped in. We are trying to fix it, and we're trying to do the best we can with what we've got at this point. So, if there's nobody else that, any commissioners that want to speak, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I've got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Frazier, second by Commissioner Rawls. All in favor? Aye.
The sheriff and his office are incompetent.
Got enough proof of that.
They're incompetent for adults. They have no training or education on juveniles. They absolutely do not need to have anything